Caring for someone with dementia is inherently a journey often filled with emotional and physical exhaustion. But when you layer on existing family conflicts about care decisions or lack of a unified support, the weight can become almost unbearable. Navigating the complexities of cognitive decline while simultaneously managing strained relationships creates a uniquely challenging and isolating experience for the primary caregiver. It's not just about managing symptoms, it's about navigating a minefield of emotions and long standing patterns that can significantly complicate an already difficult path. Join me as I talk to Jen Sullivan, an author, about her journey with her mom and her sister and mom's Alzheimer's. Welcome to Fading Memories, your source for all things dementia caregiving. I'm your host, Jen Fink, and I have had 3 generations of loved ones with dementia, and I'm here to share the knowledge I've gained with you. Welcome back, Fading Memories listeners. I'm your host, Jen Fink. Thank you so much for joining us today. With me is Jen Sullivan. She and I are going to be talking about the oh so exciting family dynamics in caregiving. Exciting with air quotes. So thanks for joining me, Jen.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So can you fill the audience in on your background a little bit? I know Jen and I, besides having the same first name, have very similar backgrounds.
Yeah. Yeah, my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's from a traumatic brain injury in the summer of 2014. They originally said she had dementia in late 2013. And my sister, she was...
Hang on a second. Let me pause this.
Okay, so I'll start. My mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's from a traumatic brain injury in the summer of 2014 is when we found that out. Originally, they said she had dementia at the end of 2013, and she lived in Arizona, like 3 blocks away from my sister, and they spent a lot of time together. My mom had been talking about moving to Oregon, so my sister and I decided to move her to Oregon. And that is like the beginning of my Alzheimer's journey with her. She and I did not have a close relationship, but my sister was supposed to move here in the summer of 2014 and begin to, take care of her. So I wrote a memoir. My mom passed away in 2020. I wrote a memoir called When the Window Closes. And it's everything I learned taking care of my mom while she was alive and dying. So,
one of the reasons for moving your mom here was because your sister was kind of getting a little burned out, correct?
Yes. She was done with the heat in Arizona. Her husband had, he was a police officer and he had a back injury and had surgery and went on a medical retirement. So there was no job to keep him there. And my mom had really been wanting to move back to Oregon. She moved down to Arizona when my sister and her husband had a late in life baby. And she went down to help be the caretaker nanny while they both worked. And once he got into school and was in, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, my mom really didn't have a lot to do. And she did not like the heat either. The older she got, it seemed like it just wasn't her thing.
I like it really warm, but I don't think I can handle Arizona.
It's very hot. It's weird at night when I would visit in the summer and it's like 100 degrees at midnight. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, well, especially compared to Oregon. I'm in Northern California, so it cools off at night. I don't think if it ever hits 100 degrees at midnight, I'm out of here. But it'll still be, in the 80s, the upper 70s. I don't know. Now I don't generally care too much with the temperatures at midnight.
Yeah.
Although we do have a deceased whole entire HVAC system. The air conditioner died at the start of the summer in 2024, and then the heat decided to die on Thanksgiving 2024, and replacing that whole system has not been in the budget. So thankfully, we have a whole house fan, and we have wood burning stove, and My office is always freezing anyway, so in the summer when it's hot upstairs, it's nice down here.
Yeah,
So,
I bet.
and the wood burning stove heats the house or heats the main part of the house much warmer than I could afford to do it with the heat. So,
Oh, yeah.
could be worse, could be a
Yeah.
lot worse.
Yeah. You could be in Oregon.
Well, then I would need the heat, but I probably wouldn't need the air conditioner. But you guys have had some days
We have.
recently.
We have.
So, so what happened with the move? You did all of the research to find a good place for mom because she wasn't
Yeah.
moving in with you, correct?
No, she wasn't. My mom had been a 55 plus community person for a long time, and that was what she wanted. She also she fell in 2009 and had a subdural hematoma, so bleeding on her brain, not in her brain. And they did a surgery to go in and repair that, but that is what kicked off her Alzheimer's. So it took 4 years really until it all came together for me and my sister to figure out kind of what was going on, and then for her to eat some spoiled chicken, get very sick,
Yuck.
and because she forgot, she left it out. She blamed Trader Joe's for selling her bad chicken, but it wasn't. It was just she portioned it out, she left it out, and then she ate it and got salmonella poisoning. I know. She always told me too to be careful of old Sal. Which is her way of saying you don't want salmonella poisoning when you're cooking. She had these funny one-liners, but yeah, so she ended up in the hospital like 4 years later, but in the meantime, there were all these things that she was doing that we just thought were her eccentricness coming out more as she got older. She, lost her car in the parking lot of a mall. We thought it was kind of funny. We didn't really start to put it together until she'd spent all of her money, her entire 401k,
Ooh.
collateral leveraged her vehicle. She paid for an antivirus program. It cost $40 a month on her computer. And then all of that was going through PayPal. And then it pinged her bank account and her Social Security went in. And then all her money was gone. And by the time I found out how bad it was, she was in the hole every single month about $1,000
Oof.
in just like automatic charges. And she didn't know what was going on. And she was always so, so good with money. So she had nothing when she got here. And I knew that I needed her to be on state services because that was really the only option. So yeah, I did. I called a place for mom and home instead senior care, I think. And both of them told me the same thing, that she would need to be on Medicaid. So that was my first step when she got here, was to get her like signed up and go in and meet with somebody, which was a whole story because she didn't bring her cane, and they asked her if she needed a cane and she said no. And I'm like, oh, it's not in here, it's in the car. And then they asked her if she was on any medicine and she said no, but she was on a bunch of medicines. And so there was this caseworker who was trying to figure out what was going on with my mom. And whenever she would look at me, my mom would yell, "Don't look at her." Because she just didn't understand that she had dementia. It came on in this way that she never fully figured out what was going on, never realized she had Alzheimer's. So that was some doing. And once I got her a room, then like the funding, we had to go around and visit all of these places that would show us a room. And then when I would tell them she was on Medicaid, oh, we don't have a room right now, there's a waiting list. So it took some time. She lived with my aunt, her sister,
Okay.
because she was retired. It was a 1-story home. I was in a 3-story condo at the time, and she couldn't have made it up and down the stairs. And it was good for her to spend some time with my Aunt Kathy. And I would just go over there and visit and hang out. And Kathy had so much patience with her and her medicine and everything that was going on. So that was very helpful.
Well, it was very helpful because your sister and brother-in-law did not end up moving to Oregon, correct?
They did not. They were supposed to move in the summer of 2014. And then she called me and said, my daughter is graduating high school next year and she doesn't want to move. I could understand that.
Yeah,
I was like, okay.
That's reasonable.
I wouldn't have wanted to move for my senior year either. So I understood that. And then I held on to this. It's going to be one more year. I can do it one more year. We moved mom into an assisted living, had 170 some residents. And it was big. And she had some funny things happen there, but it was not for her because it was just too much. It was too many people. She couldn't remember names. She couldn't remember politics because there's politics everywhere.
Unfortunately.
Yes. And so the next summer came, and my sister had called ahead of time and said, it's too rainy in Portland. And when I lived there, I didn't like the rain. So we don't want to move there. Maybe the Dalles or Hood River. Both of them are about an hour, hour and a half away. And then after that, it was, well, maybe we'll go to Yakima, which is 3 hours away. The Tri-Cities, which is in Washington, 3 hours away. And I'm throwing out all these ideas, like, what about Battleground? What about trying to keep her a little closer? But they rented an RV in the summer of 2017. So my mom had been here about 3 years at that point. And they came through here on a stop with their RV, and they went through northern Idaho near Sandpoint, which is like 45 minutes from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And they loved it. Apparently, what she told me at that point was that her husband wanted to be around snow. And I was like, when did snow become a criteria for your move out of Arizona? But that's what they wanted. So they ended up settling in a little town called Spirit Lake, Idaho, a full like 7 hours from here.
Oh my gracious.
And at that point, I was on my last nerve. It took a lot. My mom and I did not have a good relationship. I mean, I can't overstate that enough. We had a hard time when I was a teenager. And when I got married and moved out at a very young age and had kids, I really didn't include her in a lot of my life. She was eccentric, which I mentioned. She was harsh. She could be very cutting with her words. She loved to gossip. And she and my sister loved to gossip together, and I ended up on the wrong side of that. And she was just a hard lady, but she had such good friends, and she was so loyal, and she went country line dancing on the weekends. She was a red hatter, if you know what yep.
Yeah, the Red Hat Society.
Yeah, she had it in her. I just felt like I missed out on it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Is your sister's personality and your mom like my sister and me and my dad very similar. And so I guess my mom and my sister, they were either the best of friends or bitter enemies. There was not really an in-between.
bingo.
And you'd think being like my dad, I would have been close to my mom, but I don't know, they had kind of a challenging relationship. So I think that slopped over and just I don't know. I always felt like the oddball out, even though I'm the oldest.
Mm-hmm. Me
So
too.
it must be something about that, but
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah.
Yeah.
And so they would gossip about you.
They would. Like I got a nose piercing at one point, and my mom called thinking she was talking to my sister and started bagging on me for my nose piercing and how she didn't like it. I was like, Mom, you're talking to Jennifer. And she was like, whatever.
That sounds like my mom. My mom was not really good at admitting when she goofed. And we all goof, we're human.
Yes, we do. Yeah. Yeah, my mom and my sister were very much, I describe them as two peas in a pod. My sister is, the same way. She's eccentric. She can be very stubborn and judgmental, but also she's very loyal to the people in her life that are her friends, and her family and her husband. So she and my mom are similar. My dad and my mom divorced when I was 10. And if anything, I was daddy's girl. If he went out and drove the tractor, I was sitting in the seat with him. I did all the things he did, followed him around everywhere. And after my parents got divorced, I was sort of adrift. Like I'm 10 years old and I don't know what to do in my family,
Mm. Your sister and my sister sound an awful lot alike. Like, I don't know how my brother-in-law puts up with her because my sister, there are two options. You can do things her way willingly, or you can do things her way unwillingly. Those are your options.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if there's a better way, maybe an easier way, cheaper way. It doesn't matter. She's made the decision. This is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And we managed pretty well for a couple of years with mom. So after my dad died, my mom moved to memory care, and we were good at, like, my sister would visit on the weekends. I would visit on Monday afternoons, and we'd kind of text and catch each other up. Well, after a while, it was kind of like you could almost put in the text message, ditto last week. And, because it was pretty steady. Nothing changed a whole lot. There was one incident. I don't remember exactly what was going on with my mom, but it was one of those, emergency. We got to take care of this right now. And of course, I was the one that they always called. And I remember handling it. And I thought, I'm not going to bother telling her that we had this crisis. And I handled it, and it was over. Because it's like, why stress her out, like, after the fact? It's handled. Like, she even needed. And sometimes I think back on that, and it's like, I can see how somebody would be like, well, you weren't keeping her in the loop. Yeah, I was trying to keep the stress level down because my sister's always at a 12, just like very intense. Yeah, I didn't need to be second guessed. It was one of those things where it's like, it wasn't like some huge emergency. It was just like, the caregivers were always very, like, we gotta handle this right now, even though it wasn't always quite that urgent. I just kind of thought, she's got the kids and her job, and her in-laws lived with them, and like she doesn't need this. Oh, hey, there was this quote unquote crisis, and I handled it, so there you go. I just but sometimes I think back on it, I'm like, yeah, I don't even know if she knows that I didn't inform her, but I was trying to be the big sister and keep, just like, she doesn't need to stress about this. I'll just take care of it. But
Yeah.
I think she would probably see that differently. So, live and learn. But
Yep.
what I'm sure you were just absolutely overjoyed that they moved 7 hours away, you said?
7 hours away.
Gracious.
Yep.
That's a
Because
long way.
it is. And in the wintertime, part of it was once they got snowed in and the roads were so icy, then they couldn't come over. She did after my mom went into memory care and COVID happened. She did take the train. So she would take the train out of Sandpoint and come in and stay for a week at that point, and we would just go set up our camping chairs at the facility mom was in, the memory care. But yeah, it was difficult. I had some next level resentment for sure because my mom did have a lot of events, like a lot of things happen. She had a lot of paranoia. She poked someone with her cane and he pushed her over and she cracked her head and ended up in the ER.
Oof.
When they were switching her dementia medicines, they put her on something that made her hallucinate, like insane hallucinations, to the point where one time she was being taken in the ambulance to the hospital. I was at the beach, so I had like 90-minute drive to get back to the hospital to go there. I sent my daughter in to spend time with mom while I got there, but she believed in her mind she was on like a jetpack flying down the freeway, and she had the weirdest. She was so weird, but she had a lot of different. She would sneak out, I think, is the biggest thing that she did. Even though she had Alzheimer's, she was cagey enough in her brain to be like, I'm gonna wait until there's people at the front desk. I'm not gonna sign out. I'm just gonna sneak out the door, hop on a city bus, and then she would get lost. And they would wonder where she was. And one time she had her cell phone, which technology and my mom, I tried that. I got her an iPad thinking if a 1-year-old can use an iPad, my mom with Alzheimer's can learn an iPad. No, bad idea. But she knew just enough to call on her cell phone and tell me where she was. And she was, 40 minutes away on the bus. She got off in front of a familiar building. So she kind of maybe recognized where she was, but she got taken on a bus one time to the bus lot.
Ooh.
Because she ducked down in the back of the bus when the route ended. And I have this driver calling me in a panic because she's at the bus lot sitting on his bus. Oh, she was there was a lot of emergency room visits and a lot of just random crazy stuff that she did.
And that wasn't typical when she was still in Arizona. So you're like, what I'm getting at is your sister didn't have to deal with quite that much trauma.
Well, not, I mean, I don't know so much because my sister and I didn't share a lot of those things. I do know that my mom hit somebody at a red light. She T-boned a car because she was driving home and she didn't really understand what she was doing. I think that was an early sign. She got pulled over once by the police for circling her block over and over again because she couldn't remember how to get into her building.
Did they think she was casing the joint?
They did, and I think they figured out what was going on and helped her get home from the address on her license. But those were the things that my sister and her family, like the T-boning another family in a car, not funny.
No.
But there were certain things like when she lost her car at the mall and security had to drive her around until they found it. We all kind of just giggled thinking, that's so funny. I mean, and they went through different things like that with her. Um, so it got more, I think more when she got here. And she escaped a lot.
So they didn't have locked doors?
They did on the memory care,
Okay.
but in her first assisted living, she lasted a year and they politely asked me to move her somewhere else. So they had a very political, like community board. They had these wow cards. I wrote about this in my book because it is just so funny. They had these wow cards. My mom, in her early Alzheimer's, took every wow card she could find, crossed out wow, and wrote boo on them. Yes. And passed them out with
No.
many people as would take them for them to write things they didn't like about people who work there or the janitor or the cook or the food. Oh my goodness, the boo cards were the biggest flop. And the people there who worked there, the staff, like they had just had a major corporate buyout. They were like, she needs to go. They did not find it funny. I laughed when they called me to tell me about it. I laughed out loud and I could tell on the other end of the phone that she did not find it funny at all. So yeah,
Did that community not have a memory care attached?
no, it was
Okay.
it was just an independent living and assisted living. So then I was on the hunt for a new assisted living because that's where she was in her care needs. And I found this beautiful little place that had only 60 residents. And my mom had a front room and a kitchen bathroom area and a bedroom in the back. And she was on the second floor. There was an elevator, which was good. And it had vaulted ceilings with skylights and there was less people there. And she was there from about 2015 until 2018. So about three and a half years. And she made a lot of friends. She had a lot of people there who really cared about her and, took care of her once they sort of figured out what was going on.
Yeah,
So,
that's nice.
mhm,
Yeah. My mom went from living at home to memory care, which the transition was not great.
No, no.
And the
Oh, that was
executive
hard.
director kept telling me she'll adjust, and he figured it'd be 2 or 3 weeks. It was 6, so about week 4, I'm thinking, dude, you're the one that needs memory care because this woman she's not getting it. And she had her dog with her. I mean, could not have made the transition any easier. And then one of my favorite stories was, I showed up and this was in mid 2017. And there was a handful of female residents who were always demanding to use the phone. I need to use the telephone. I was like, oh my God. My dad was a retired phone company employee. So it was always kind of extra funny that they were always demanding to use the phone and they absolutely had to have the yellow pages. So I was like, hello, it's 2017. Do they have yellow pages anymore?
I don't know.
She was following this gal who needed to call her son, and they kept reassuring her that they've called him. They left a message. I don't know if they did or not, probably. And she was just adamant. My mom was trailing along behind her, saw me, and goes, "Oh, oh, come with me. I have to help my friend." And it was like angels singing. I felt like I'd won the jumbo lotto plus a bag of diamonds and a basket full of golden retriever puppies. I mean, it was like
Yay.
the best moment because I thought, oh, for the love of God, finally.
Yeah.
And from that point on, she had friends. The memory care she was in, I think, maxed out somewhere 32, 34 residents. They weren't always full. I mean, unfortunately, you probably experienced this. People run out of, families run out of money, so residents leave, residents pass away.
Yeah.
There's always kind of a turnover. And it was interesting to me, and maybe it should have been a prophecy, that nobody had lived there for like a decade. So my mom moved in at 74. So I figured she was going to be there a long time.
Yeah.
And she fell and broke her leg at the start of the pandemic and passed away March 31st, 2020. So I was blessed. I did not have to go through all the stuff that you went through. And her memory care had like a trial run. So the winter before, the assisted living part of the community had a huge, huge flu outbreak.
Oh, yeah.
So it was almost quarantined. It wasn't mandatory, but you'd show up and there was like a big red sign on the door. It was like, warning, if you enter here, you're at risk. They were delivering food to the assisted living residents in their apartments. The dining room was closed. It was just, I mean, they literally had, and I don't think they took the memory care residents into the assisted living part of the community for any activities. The activities might have been curtailed. I don't know. I just know that it was, they would leave windows cracked open a little bit, which I'm always cold. So yeah, that was not fun.
Yeah.
But the airflow, I don't know if that helped or not. So they had a much better outcome with COVID. I don't believe they lost anybody. There was people that passed away, like my mom. Did not die from COVID. I know your mom did. Um, I thought they lost like one employee and maybe it was really minor compared to everything you were reading in the news.
Yeah.
So, it felt better. I just thought it was weird. I went to my mom died March 31st. They didn't have me clean out her room until early May. So, like, 6, 7 weeks. And then I went back and visited around Halloween 2020, and they had the plastic partitions. So they had the little square dining tables and then like a plastic X. So each person had their own little. I thought, this is dumb, like the air around this plastic partition is still floating around here.
I know. It's crazy.
And I'm like, yeah, it was not, it was weird. But like I said, I didn't have to deal with window visits and the Lord only knows. By that point, my sister and I were like, well, I had a caregiver tell me, I didn't know you had a sister. And I'm like, well, you probably haven't seen her because she visits on the weekends. She's like, I'm here on the weekends. She was here like one weekend day. And I thought, that's interesting. And, like, bless my heart. I did not want to acknowledge that my sister probably had stopped visiting. Because I'm thinking, you've been visiting all this time. Like, all of a sudden now you don't. And we weren't really talking. And there was no way to say, hey, you're still seeing mom, right? Or did something happen? Because at that point, my mom was getting she was easily agitated. The more help she needed, the less she accepted. And she would literally claw people. She drew blood on her main caregiver at least twice. It was very embarrassing. Yeah, it was like, because they can't really fight back. One time my mom tried to claw me, so I grabbed her wrists. And I know they couldn't have done that. So I don't, it was a situation that I was trying to figure out how to solve and never did come up with a solution. But I think what happened is my mom probably did something to my niece. My sister was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I've never found out because
Yeah.
by that point we weren't really speaking to each other very
Yeah.
much. Is that what happened with you and your sister? You kind of just drifted more apart because they decided not to move close by?
Yeah, she would come out. They would come out in the summertime for, a weekend or something. Um, and then when her older kids who had, been in college or graduated high school or whatever came home, they would drive at a holiday, whether it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, and come out so that they could see their Nana and we would all go out to eat. But for the first, until mom was in memory care, my sister did not come out quite as often as I thought she would. They came out on holidays. And they also, when they came out, my mom was very excited to have visitors. So she was on her very best behavior. So they got to see happy dementia, Alzheimer's mom, whereas I dealt with all the rest of it, which was frustrating for me because I would try to explain to them, like, she wasn't like this yesterday. And 2 days ago, we had this thing happen, and they just didn't see it. So they didn't get it. I think, in all honesty, my sister probably thought I was over exaggerating. So,
Stop complaining.
yeah.
And she probably was deflecting, so
Mhm.
not to take that personally.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, there she is complaining about mom because I'm not doing what she thinks I should do. I can totally hear it.
Yeah. I think, too, and looking back on it, I think that my sister, for whatever reason, wasn't able to handle, maybe that's not the right word, but she just couldn't deal with my mom with Alzheimer's. She wanted her to be the way she used to be and just could not process the change. And so for her, it was like, I need to stay away because it made her mad. It made her upset. There were certain times, especially after mom was in memory care, which that move was, oh my goodness, so stressful, just incredibly stressful getting her in there. Finding a room for her, period, but then getting her in there was a lot. Um, yeah, my sister just couldn't take the changes. And my mom started to only know my face
Mm-hmm.
and not hers. And then that would sort of irritate her as well. Like, she doesn't even remember me. So what's the point?
True. I've talked
Yeah.
to people who have they're like one of four. And there's like one that does everything, one that
Mhm.
kind of helps, one that mostly talks the talk, and one that's just like, I can't see mom like this. And they just check out
Yeah.
completely. And it's like, this is all of your mom. You guys, this is your mom, all four of you. Like, it's not uncommon for people to be like, I don't want to remember her this way.
Hmm.
You know, my mom had
Yeah.
dementia, Alzheimer's for so long. It's hard for me to remember when she wasn't having issues with her memory.
Oh yeah. I feel that way too. It's like seems like a whole other life before. It's hard to remember. I work at trying to remember the happy times, but I honestly didn't have a well of happy times with my mom to draw from when I became her caregiver. I didn't have like happy memories and fun times and laughs and all those things to like give me this, caregiver spirit. I really had to dig that out of myself
Yeah,
to
me
do
too.
it.
So my mom also had, I don't know if you would call it a traumatic brain injury. She T-boned a drunk driver that turned in front of her, and
Mm.
she hit the steering wheel so hard with her face. There's a nerve that comes right through the top of your cheekbone that you can feel. You jab your face. And for a long time, that side of her face was numb, and then the nerve kind of regenerated a bit. And so it felt like Novocaine wearing off. That's how she
Oh, wow.
described it. And that was December of 91. My daughter was a month old. Like literally, it was December 14th, 1991. So she slept through the night. She was a month old. Like I thought, whoo, great. There's a reason I have one. I was a very easy baby. My daughter was a very easy baby. My sister was a projectile vomit baby for a year. So chalk one up for me. I learned. I'm like, I'm not stupid enough to think the second one will be this easy.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Having one. And that was a good choice. But I recently talked to a geriatrician for the show, and he kept saying, well, you never know what's going to hit us. You never know what's going to hit us. And I kept trying to work in my particular question was I know what my mom hit. I know what hit my mom was this drunk driver, and then explained the accident. She broke her ankle and she was like
Mm.
40, almost 49. So she wasn't very old. Like I said, 1991. They worked on her ankle. I don't know that they did anything about her head. I mean,
Yeah.
one eye like basically ruptured all of the blood vessels. I mean, her
Oh.
entire eye was red. It was not very,
Oh.
yeah, it was like, can you just talk to us?
Yeah.
I'd like a profile, please, because it wasn't just like bloodshot. The entire white of her eye was, it was nasty.
Oh.
And she and I have green eyes, so it was just, yeah, I'm like, Mom, that Christmas eye is not doing it.
Yeah, not doing it.
But I asked him, I said, could that have triggered her Alzheimer's because she started showing signs of memory issues in like 95, 96 when she was in her early 50s. And he goes,
Mm.
absolutely. And had she known about the lifestyle choices that she should have made to lessen the risk after the accident, she might not have gotten Alzheimer's quite as young. I
Yeah.
was like, well, that answered that question. So that's it was a I wish we had gotten that as the recording, but I have been sharing that little tidbit just because I've been curious about it for a very long time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so when so your mom had the brain bleed. Okay. Brain bleed, or it was a bleed on the brain. In what year? 2009?
2009. And in about 2002 or three, it was rainy and she was getting off the bus from work, and a car jumped the curb and almost hit her. And as she tried to get out of the way, she fell backward and hit her head and went to the hospital with the whole foam thing around her. And we went to the ER. Her whole head swelled up, like
Ooh.
swelled up with fluid to the point where you could put your finger and it would stay.
Oof.
So my kids called her sponge head Nana Pants for a while because she was just, her head was just swelled up. And then in 19, I want to say 89 or 90, she was carrying a clock, a big clock face, in to get repaired. And she lost her balance in the parking lot and fell backward and hit her head, and that time ended up in the hospital too. So three concussion falls, but spaced out quite a big distance. But she also had headaches and migraines, and Vanquish, the pills that have the Tylenol, caffeine, and aspirin in them. She used to take those and a Diet Coke, caffeine-free Diet Coke,
Oh, my
which
mom drank that too.
I don't get it. It's brown water. I mean, what is the point of caffeine-free Diet Coke? She loved it. But she would just pound Vanquish and caffeine-free Diet Coke for her headaches. And so she, too, no one told her. She didn't really take good care of herself and had these habits and things that she, I think, put in her body and just kept on plowing through life. And, they didn't know how it was going to impact her in the long run.
Yeah, from what my understanding is that concussions or brain injuries, they compound.
Mm-hmm.
I had a concussion in 1996. I was spooling a roll of film that had broken off the spindle inside the little film canister. I am so showing my age now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I dropped the roll of film on the floor, and I thought I was like centered in this room. It was pitch black, obviously. And I bent over and smacked my head on a stainless steel sink. And all I remember is, oh, wow, the stars and Tweety Bird thing really is.
Uh-huh.
And I had a headache for 3 days. And I finally went to the doctor, and they're like, yeah, you probably have a concussion. Go home and take these pills because
Yeah.
it'll probably knock you out. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with the 4-year-old? And then I
Mm.
flew off my bike in 2016. So slightly less than 20 years later,
Yeah.
and knocked myself out cold.
Wow.
Um, they said I didn't have a concussion. It did not feel this. I didn't have a headache for 3 days. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was, I guess maybe less traumatic, which is amazing because I cracked my bike helmet all the way through.
Wow.
Yeah, I get really tested. Just saw a dad riding behind his kid, kids riding the bike, got the helmet on, dad's right behind him, no helmet. It's like,
Oh,
I just want to yell at them, but I know that won't do any good. So it's like, I saved that helmet for a long time and showed people. I'm like, this could have been my skull.
yeah.
God only knows. But at that point, my mom was pretty far along in her disease. So yeah,
Wow.
brain health is my. I remind my general physician and any doctors, minus the dermatologist, he doesn't really need to worry about brain
Yeah.
health. That that's all we don't have cancer in my family, no female cancer. Like we're gonna worry about
Yeah.
brain health first, second, and then the other stuff, is kind of a distant third, but
Yeah.
that's a whole other topic. So when your
Yeah.
sister didn't move out here, well, you sounds like you might have had like some adjustments when they didn't move out the first year and like, okay, I can handle this. And then they didn't come the second year.
Yeah. Okay, I can make it another year. And then when they came through on the road trip, I was thinking, okay, they're gonna move here after this, because they've got this RV. And yeah, when I realized like, okay, they're moving to Idaho, and then I just it was next level difficult, and it took a while. It honestly took my mom going into memory care and adjusting to that. And then it was it was just work for me to let go of my resentment and really look at the experience that I was having with my mom in what was the last years of her life. Although I thought too, she would live another 10 years. She was small, spry. She was on her feet when COVID happened. She would dance around when the accordion man came to play. She still had a cane a lot of the time and only sometimes a walker. So I thought I was in for the long haul. And I realized it was a gift that I needed and that I needed to treasure, that I got to spend this time with my mom, where she eventually really liked me. And she probably did love me, but I was a nice lady who came to visit. She didn't always remember my name. She certainly at that point didn't know I was her daughter. And if I did say mom or anything like that, then she would look at me like, you're my daughter? How did I miss that? And it would kind of stress her out. So, yeah, that is really what helped me just move into a more calm and peaceful caregiver mode. My mom was attuned to my emotions. So if I was upset, man, did she pick up on that so fast. So I had to always, when I was with her, not be frustrated that I was with her, or she would get frustrated back with me. And I realized like this is a gift, you know, in the last years of her life, to be able to get to know her and spend time with her in a way I never would have imagined.
I
So,
I was always the nice lady that did fun things with my mom. She always told everybody, "Oh, she's my best friend. I've
aw.
known her for so long." And then everybody would laugh because it'd be like, "Yeah, you think?" One day I even threw out the comment, "I think you've known me longer than anybody else." And she goes, "Yeah, probably." And I'm like, at that point, I'd already verified that she did not remember our role. She just knew I was the person that did fun things with her.
Yeah.
And I was under the impression that my sister would do things with her. She'd bring the kids for a while. She would take my mom to watch, but my niece played basketball, which that
Hmm.
they finally had to end that because it was late afternoon, early evening. And I don't know how my mom dealt with the squeaky tennis shoes on the floor,
Mm.
because we had to stop taking her out to restaurants because she would just continuously complain about the noise,
Oh, yeah.
which, is warranted, but, every 2 minutes talking about how noisy it is in here was just like, yeah, you're making it worse. And it was really hard the day of my dad's funeral. He's intern, well, not the funeral, in the internment. He's at a military um cemetery. It's like an hour away from like almost everybody.
Mm.
Not the best choice, thanks, Dad. But and they don't give you a lot of options. They're like, you can have A or B, and it's like, okay, so we're gonna leave kind of, between breakfast and lunch, have the ceremony. Like, there's no way we're gonna be able to get back home without everybody like wanting to gnaw off a limb. And my sister did
Mm.
look for quiet, smallish restaurant that was closed. I mean, it was like, ugh, it was a challenge. But I don't know what happened in the 3 years, where if she just started visiting less because the kids were, I don't know. I don't know what happened. And I don't really, I guess I think about it, I don't really have resentment for it. I have a resentment that my sisters convinced my mom's side of the family that I did terrible things. I took mom's money. It's like that was projection. My husband managed the tenants that we rented the house to. That's what he's a real estate broker and a property manager. That's what he does. Of course, he wasn't charging us anything because it would be like, well, let me charge myself money out of this pocket. I mean, like that would have been almost more complicated than it would be worth. It was like,
Yeah.
none of it made any sense. And, just it was, I don't understand how family can just assume the worst, just like, especially when, after my mom died, my sister was like, absolutely, the husband, brother in law is not selling the house. So we ended up having to pay my cousin the commission. It's like the weirdest thing. And
Oh, yeah.
and when the whole process of selling the house, I at one point one of the potential buyers was getting very crossways with my cousin, just like demanding. And I said, we got two other offers. Kick him to the curb. Like, you don't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, did I not demonstrate that I'm like a rational, reasonable human that, I didn't expect you to take abuse from some potential buyer? It's like, no, kick that turkey to the curb. I thought I demonstrated that I was not some evil witch. And my mom died and my sister didn't want to do the celebration of life that I suggested. And so we've not done any. And nobody in her my mom's youngest sister has mental health issues. So occasionally I get Facebook Messenger things from her. I don't even know if she knows who she's sending them to. And it's like, okay, most of the time I don't respond. I responded to one. They closed a museum. The Doge people closed a museum. And she's like, she forwarded the article. And I said, well, of course they did, because it's celebrating the people that founded the area where we all grew up. My aunt, my mom, and her siblings, and my sister and I, which in California, like, it doesn't take too many brain cells to think it's probably a Hispanic person that founded this area, da 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 da. Not this area because I moved, but anyway. And I said, of course they closed that one because it's not celebrating a white man or a war. And I got the angry face emoji, and I thought, now is she angry at my response or angry that they closed it? I'm like, I'm not engaging.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't want to go there. But it's so hard. Like, families are so weird. Like, why do you believe, like, you worked with me and I was very reasonable because there wasn't, and like, it would have taken more effort to be unreasonable. There wasn't anything to be unreasonable about. My sister and I almost agreed on everything too, which was a miracle and a half. We've never agreed on anything.
Yeah.
So that was the hardest part of the end of caregiving, is the fallout. Like, my mom was the oldest of four. The oldest brother, I haven't seen or heard from him in decades. Did not call, did not come. When my dad died, no communication. Mom dies, no communication. So it's like, and you think I'm the bad person? Okay. I don't, whatever.
Yeah.
Moving along.
Yeah.
I miss the younger brother, my uncle, but it's like,
Yeah.
sometimes I think, well, maybe I should reach out. And other times I'm like, but you believe this BS about me. So families are, they're tricky.
Very tricky.
So do you have you don't have a relationship with your sister now?
No, I do not. I do not. My mom, my sister came out a week at a time every month from pretty much the time COVID started until August was the last time she was out. So she would take the train, and then we would go in our camping chairs and sit outside the window and talk to mom. And I mean, I recognize we were lucky to even have a window. There were plenty of people that did not, in buildings where there wasn't a communal window that they could all come to and talk. So yeah, we did that. And my mom, there was there was a lot of turnover. Once COVID happened, I noticed there was a lot of turnover inside the building. And then um, they did this. They told me one day that I couldn't come to the window, that I had to talk to her on FaceTime, essentially. So I did that. And then the next time I called her, because I had a lunch date with her almost every day on camera or at the window. And then they told me that she could not be on camera because she couldn't come out of her room. And I was like, oh, what's going on? And I emailed and asked, I called and I didn't really get a response. And then a couple days later, we got an email that a new employee had COVID and that they had just the one employee, but they were testing everybody. And it was a week later before the results came back because testing back then,
Yeah.
it's not like an instant thing you could do like we can now. It was send it off somewhere and wait for the results. And so a week later, we found out mom had COVID. And that would have been about August 12th, I think. And we were still told in an email that everything was good and only a few people had COVID. And then what they did is they called me a few days later and said she was not doing well. And I called my sister and they got their dogs boarded at a kennel and came right out and spent a week here. They moved mom to a COVID nursing home, which is where they put everybody who was most likely on Medicaid at that point. And um, there was really the window. Oh my gosh, the window was dirty. It was an old building. There was a screen. We could hardly see her, but we did have one window visit with her, and the rest of it was over FaceTime on an iPad. But my sister and I sat outside the memory care the day we knew they were moving her. And we were in the parking lot across the street watching ambulance. And there were only 20 residents at her building.
Mm.
Ambulance after ambulance come and take people away. And then we saw the cook come out and we went over and talked to her from a distance, all with our masks on, everything's so different. And she said mom had been gone for about 2 hours. So we missed her. We didn't see her outside and getting in the ambulance. And then, we saw mom at the window and she was there. She was upright. She fell asleep in her chair. She was medicated. But my sister was like, I think she's going to be okay. So if we get a good report that she's just hanging in, we're going to go home. And they did. They left. And it wasn't even 24, 36 hours later that I got a call essentially telling me that mom was in end of life and that she was having a hard time breathing. She had a lot of pain. She was struggling and had a high fever. And so we did 2 FaceTime calls, my sister in Idaho and me here with my mom. She was in a profile laying on the bed. And we just told her stories and sang her songs. And we told her the second day things that we did as kids that we lied to her about. Yeah. Like when I was like 17, I drove her car really fast. It was this cool bridge, and the bridge had a bump at the end. And if you just went fast enough, you could catch some air and hit the bump just right coming down. Only I broke her muffler off her car.
Oops.
And so it sounded like a jet engine driving it home, and I just parked it in front of the house and went inside. And the next morning she comes in and she turns on her car and I can hear it. And she comes in, she goes, what the hell happened to my car? And I said, I don't know, Mom. I lied. My sister lied to her about a couple things too. And I could hear my mom sort of making these sounds. So I just hope that she was listening and could hear us and was kind of laughing. But she passed away at 12:30 in the morning on Monday, August 24th. And I got a call in the middle of the night from the nurse. And I knew, like, there's no reason my phone would ring this late.
Yeah.
And she told me that she had gone in at midnight and checked on my mom and she was struggling. So they gave her more morphine. And when she went back a half hour later, she had passed away. So at some point between 12 and 12:30. And we did not do a funeral, any kind of service. It took me a month to get her belongings, and I didn't even get everything that was hers. They kept them in quarantine. They kept my mom in quarantine for 2 weeks before she was cremated. And then
Interesting.
Yeah, Oregon had some weird rules about that, and I wanted to go in and see her because I hadn't been able to touch her or see her. And the woman at the funeral home was just crying, telling me that I couldn't come in. And I was crying on the phone too. But they had to keep her in plastic for over 2 weeks because they didn't know if the body was contagious. That's what she told me. So I held on to the ashes and we had planned an outdoor service in November of 2020. And our governor here, right around Thanksgiving, put a quarantine or not like a more restrictions on us, and that we could not have outdoor gatherings without quarantining ahead of time and like no more than 10 people. So it took that whole thing, we couldn't do it. We couldn't do that because we had aunts and uncles and people that are older, my mom's age, her brothers and sisters that live here and my mom's best friend, and nobody wanted to risk that. So we had our celebration of life for her the next summer at the same park that I had planned on. And we had a bagpipe player because she's Irish come out and he played some songs and then Amazing Grace. And we let butterflies go. Like the butterflies you get that are like sleeping, and when you open them up, they take off. It
I
was
used,
a,
I
it,
used to photograph weddings, so I'm very familiar
oh
with
yeah,
butterfly relief.
yeah. It was I think my mom would have loved it. There was a lot of her friends there, my sister and her whole family, all my kids. We had it was despite the fact that it was outside and kind of near a playground where some kids were, I think as soon as everybody realized we were having a memorial service, the parents like took their kids and said, let's go play somewhere else. Because I don't remember the noise from that. I just remember that it was very beautiful. And I think my mom would have loved it.
Yeah, I struggle with, so we haven't done anything. Like
Mm.
nobody communicates with me. Apparently I must be the evil, you know what, because I did not plan this funeral. And like I said, my dad is at a military cemetery. That was him. He was in the
Yeah.
Marines for 4 years, once a Marine, always a Marine.
Yeah.
That was him. That's not my mom. And they charge money to basically open the vault, I guess is what they call it.
Yes.
My sister wasn't interested in paying for that. She wasn't interested. She didn't want to do two events. And I'm like, we don't need to do two
Mm.
events. I just wanted, because my mom was a huge sugar fiend. I just wanted to have a dessert bar with her beloved Diet Coke, even though Diet Coke and brownies is gross.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna have iced tea because that's what I drink, but I just wanted to have a dessert buffet with her friends. Our dad's funeral was like over 300 people. It was
Oh.
very borderline overwhelming. Probably actually
Mm.
was overwhelming, but you're kind of a little bit in denial. And I knew that wouldn't be the case with my mom because people drifted away, people had died,
Yeah.
just life, COVID, everything. And I wanted to do it in the yard of her home that they'd had since 1970. COVID prevented that. And it got to the point where it's like, I don't think being in a military cemetery is what my mom wants. Like, would she want to be with my dad? Maybe.
Mm.
But she talked about being scattered. So I keep trying to do that. We went
Yeah.
to Glacier National Park in 2023, and I intended to bring her with us, and I forgot.
Oh.
So, um, I have a closet full of ashes. I've got dogs,
Yeah, me
and
too.
a couple of cats, or at least one cat. I don't know. I have the dead pets, and my mom is not in that closet, but now my mother-in-law is.
My mother-in-law's here, my dad, three pets, and my mom. That's it. That's the ashes I have here at the house.
Yeah, my in-laws estranged themselves from us,
Mhm.
and I you may be aware. I don't know. I feel really bad for the mail carrier because they have to get a signature for the box, and it says human cremains all over it. And I'm like,
It does.
ooh. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is my mother. And she's like, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm like, It's fine. And I knew my husband did not follow what I suggested because I'm like, I've been through this. My parents are gone. I know. I know why I know how you feel about this estrangement, and like he had a
Mhm.
not great childhood. But it's different when somebody dies. Now you can't ever fix anything. And
Yeah.
so I told him, I'm like, I'll take care of it. And the closet, all the animals are in down here next to my office. I said, sorry, mom-in-law, of put her next to all the dead pets.
Oh.
And I don't know what she would have wanted because she was eccentric too. She was a lot like my sister. You did everything her way.
Yeah.
And even then it didn't always make her happy. It was like very difficult. So families are very challenging. But I'm surprised your sister actually came out and did window visits during COVID. That would almost seem like a perfect excuse not to come.
Not to. Yeah. Yeah, I was happy to have her here. And, she stayed at our house, which was nice. She stayed in the guest room and we had good times. We watched TV. There were certain shows she didn't want to watch, so we just waited until she was gone and caught up on them. Um, but yeah, it was nice. It was probably the most normal relationship that I had had with her at that point for just those few months. And then Christmas 2020, we went to her house in Idaho. Grief is weird, and I thought she and I would grieve the same kind of way for my mom. My sister did not want to talk about it at all, at all. And I had a lot of grief, and we had a disagreement at her house, and so we left, and after Christmas went back, and that was like the first step of not really speaking to each other. We mostly did texting after that, and I planned the entire memorial for mom. And when we got there, she was upset at the noise from the park, the playground, and wanted to move somewhere else. And I was like, we cannot move somewhere else. Every shelter at this park is booked today. And she got mad and left and walked off and came back right as we started, sat away from us, wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't talk to my husband. We all went out to my mom's favorite restaurant and ate. She gave everybody else hugs, but not us. And then after that, it was very sporadic talking. And sometime in 2022, I think I said something to her that, I don't know, offended her, I suppose, or irritated her. And that was it. We haven't spoken since.
Families.
Yeah.
I really wish you could just sort of like mix and match. Like I'll take
Mm-hmm.
that, like I understand your brother better than you do, and you can have this. Like we just like kind of have like a family buffet where we just pick the ones that we fit best with instead of the ones that we were born to.
Yeah. And that'd be nice. I miss her kids. She has well, they had 6 altogether, but they were a blended family and then had one together at the end. I miss my nieces and nephews a lot. But they don't talk to me because they're afraid that if she finds out they're talking to me, that she'll get mad at them too and not talk to them.
Yeah, I went through it so I go back to my old hometown for my hairdresser, the chiropractor, my daughter's there. And I walked into my chiropractor one day and I was like, that girl, that's my niece. Now, my sister, my niece is 19. My sister has made it almost impossible to have a relationship with my niece her entire life, which I resent very much because it's like my husband's an only child. So this is my only option to be like, and I would have been a fun aunt. I would have done the fun things, but I'm also super practical and detail oriented. So it's not like I would have undermined child rearing. Like my daughter was 14 when my niece was born. I'd already been there, done that. So I was like, I would have been an awesome aunt. And I walked in and I was like, that has got to be my niece. And so we were, I was booking my next appointment and I said, I can't believe how fast time goes. Just seems like it was Chris, da, 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 da. And I made the comment that, well, something about, we were talking about the holidays. My daughter and I, our birthdays are mid-November. And I said, there's the 2 birthdays, then Thanksgiving, boom, Christmas, and now all of a sudden here it is January. And she goes, yeah, I can relate. I have a November birthday too. My niece was born on the Marine Corps birthday, which is November 10th. Something my dad reminded my sister of every year, and it irritates every year, which you'd think he'd stop. And I don't know why she was irritated. And so I was like, yeah, that's my niece. And I went home and I'm like, I may actually have to get a chiropractor up here. My husband's like, why? I'm like, because I am pretty sure niece is the receptionist at the chiropractor's office. We just
Wow.
that's and he's like, well, just talk to her. He's like, just talk to her. And I'm like, we've never really had a relationship because my sister did not want us to have a relationship. And I don't want to say anything like I can't really say that to my niece because that's denigrating her mom. That's not cool.
Wow.
It's the truth, but still, it's like just because it's the truth doesn't mean that's how I want to engage with my niece. For better or worse, this past month she wasn't the one that was there, so now I don't know what to do.
No.
I go to this chiropractor for a long time, and I would think he would also know it was my niece. Like the whole thing is like nobody's admitted it. We've all just sort of pretended that we don't know. It's so
Yeah.
bizarre. So
Wow.
bizarre. So do you have a quick tip for people on like how to navigate these challenging relationships?
Oh man. A quick tip. Deep breaths.
Yeah.
There was a lot of times when going there to see my mom and when my sister came to town, there was a lot of anxiety. I had like anxiety. I wanted mom to be in a good mood, but I also wanted, her not to get mad at me or whatever. And a lot of deep breaths. I also listened to very, very loud music in my car sometimes when I was driving home to where I had no brain, like my brain couldn't function and the beat of the music just thumped my heart. Um, a lot of deep breaths. And then one thing I did with my mom towards the end, which really helped, was because she had her eccentric, angry, she rammed a nurse with her walker once. She was a pill. I went there and looked at taking care of visiting her like I was volunteering at a memory care. And if she was mad and irritable and cranky and telling me they were feeding her muddy water, which was just that Mucilex stuff in water to help her have regular movements,
Mm-hmm.
um, I wouldn't get mad. It helps so much in my mindset if I'm a volunteer and she is just a lady. I wouldn't get mad if it was just some woman with Alzheimer's that I was helping out. And and so that helped a lot when I was driving home and going there, I would have less anxiety, just thinking like I'm in volunteer mode. And if she was in a great mood and she was excited to see me and she wanted to sit down and I painted her nails and cut her hair and she knew my name or whatever, not just happy to see me, then it was a different kind of visit where I didn't have to be like, I'm a volunteer. I'm her daughter visiting her today. She may not know it. And that made a real big difference for me.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I always, and people debate me on the benefits of this one, but I would always, as I approach the door, be like, this is gonna be awful. She's gonna, I'm just like, I set my expectations like lower than low and negative, 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 which I get accused of being negative all the time. And then it could almost not be that bad. Like I would just anticipate just the most horrendous time. And it was only that way once after she fell. She had stitches over her head. She was in pain. She was cranky. She was
Mm.
she was trying to eat, but the food kept going off the back of her plate. So it was like scoop, get a little bit of food in, clean up. There was a lot of anxious movements. And I kept
Mm-hmm.
saying, um, I know you're enjoying that, but would you prefer something else that's a little less trouble? I never said, oh, you're having trouble eating. Like, never accused her. If she gets
Mm-hmm.
so mad at me, she literally is sitting there with a cloth napkin in front of her face. She's just like totally ignoring me. It was so bad. One of the volunteers from the assisted living, so a gal that was like my mom's age, literally had to walk my mom out to the car. My mom wouldn't even deal with me. I was like, okay,
Oh.
that was about the only time it was as bad as I could have thought of. It was pretty bad. But, I like the idea of volunteering. That's a little bit more of a positive spin on the way I handled things. But I want to remind the listeners that Jen's book is called When a Window Closes.
When the window
When
closes.
the window closes. And that is
Yeah,
linked in the show notes.
yeah. The window, like seeing her at the window and God and doors and windows. That's kind of where that came from. I didn't know what I was going to call it. for a long, long time.
Well, I'm working on a book. I have a working title, but I don't know if it'll end up being the actual title.
Yeah.
Um,
I had a working title too. It was called Death Interrupted.
that's interesting.
Yeah, that was my working title. And then I called it Poop Hugs for a while. I have a chapter in my book called Poop Hugs and Poop Pictures because there was so much of that at the end, where we like give these hugs, like, oh, holding our breath, and then a quick picture holding our breath and smiles on our faces. Cause it's it's quite an experience walking through Alzheimer's with somebody.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story about your sibling. And I can share a little bit about mine. I don't talk about mine too often because, eh,
Yep.
again, I don't want to be negative on the show. There's no point in talking negative about somebody that can't really debate back, and you don't want to, you don't want that anyway. So I just don't talk about it. I think a lot of people, our society is kind of like, well, how can you not talk to your sister? It's like, trust me, like, and then you're into that. Well, if I tell you all the reasons, I'm going to sound like the bad person.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a challenging topic. So I really appreciate that you came on and shared a lot about your story with your mom, because we could go on for probably another hour with the whole COVID thing. And
Yeah, absolutely.
so thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen.